Hey guys, and welcome back to G's Autos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alright, we are now getting to the pointy end of the Nigel build, and it's look, I'm feeling pretty good. It's getting exciting, so I can't wait to drive the car, really. It's just, I'm looking forward to it so much. Now, we've done some work. When I say we, my brother and I, he's been kind enough to come up again and give me a big hand with the car, and it's really appreciated. It's great to spend time with him. And so he gave me a hand with the fuel setup. So we've run the fuel line into the engine bay with the new fuel pump and fuel filter. And I've set the tank up. That's ready to go in. And we've done a few other bits and pieces. So once all this is done in regards to setting up the carbies and whatnot, and we did a test fit with the carbs. We ran into a few little issues which need to be ironed out, but you'll see that in the video. And like I said, once all this is done, we can then move on to the electrical stuff and see what little gremlins and that we find in that side of the build. But anyway, guys, it's getting exciting. Really looking forward to driving it. So anyway, enough out of me. Have a look at the video. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. Leave any comments, guys. I welcome all that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, so we're currently removing all the brake components off the rear end. So there's all the bits and pieces down there. My brother is currently working on the other side, so what I'm going to do now that all these parts are off, I'm going to go through and give this a really good clean, and then we'll move on to the next step. So we do have all the brand new components, so let's take a look at those. Here's one of the new rear drums. So the design on this is slightly different to the original that's come off it. So different lip sizes and depths and things like that, but the overall diameter and height is exactly the same. So we'll double check to make sure that these are A-OK to go on. We've got the new brake shoes. I want to double check that the width of these is the same. I'll double check that. New brake cylinders, both sides, everything both sides. New brake lines. So that's what we're doing at the moment. So I'm going to go and give this my side a clean, and we'll take a look. Alright, so I have gone over this with a couple of different sized brushes and some brake cleaner, and cleaned up most of the gunk sitting on here. So it's come up pretty clean. I've just got to get the boss to come around and have a look, make sure he's happy with that before I move on to the next step. I'm going to remove the rear brake cylinder, and then I'm going to clean up the thread on the brake line where it screws into this. I'll check the thread on this one first before I then go and thread it onto the brand newie, just to make sure it's all good. I'd hate to strip out a brand new thread or a thread on the brand new brake cylinder. So that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, rear brakes have all been fitted and they come up really, really good. Now, we ran into some issues with the rear brakes, and that was to do with the pads, not the pads, the shoes that were supplied. All the part suppliers have an incorrect part number, which is for the later model drums. So there is a correct part number which no one lists. I think only one supplier listed the correct part. Even in their list, they still listed the other part number as a correct fit as well, which is, they will not fit. And I'll do a side-by-side comparison and show you why. Now here's the problem we ran into with the rear shoes. This is for a later model Corolla, and this is for the AE82. So this one is spot on correct. Now, here and here might look like it lines up, and there doesn't look too bad. But as you come down, you'll see that that's a different. They're completely different. But when you get down here, it's about 3 mil too low. So basically, it sits like the difference between the two is like that, when it should be. You'd think they'd be even, but they're not. So that extra 3 mil just locks up the drum, and it will not work. Nothing lines up. It just you might get it on there, but it will not work, and there's not enough adjustment to bring it in. So all the part manufacturers, all the part suppliers, I should say, have this listed as correct when actually it's incorrect. So the number for that part is this one, and the correct part number is this. Now the other issue we ran into with the brakes, now this goes for the front and the rear brakes, were these brake lines. Now the particular brand that I purchased, it might be generic across a fair number of different cars. However, where this section locks into here, we actually had to open it up to allow this to fit correctly. And so we just had to grind them out and make a few adjustments along the way to actually get it to fit. So that needed to be done to all 4 lines, and that really slowed the process down. So yeah, that's just another thing to keep in mind with these aftermarket parts. And sometimes, yes, they may list it as the correct part number, it's a direct fit, when in fact it isn't. Alright guys, so what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on getting the fuel lines done and the fuel tank into Nigel. So under Big Red here, I'm actually going to use the fuel tank out of this one. I'm not going to go with the original one that came out of Nigel that I cleaned. So we're going to take that one out today and chuck that into Nigel, and we're going to take a look at the intake setup, and we're going to actually plug up those holes that were originally for the injectors. Now that we're going carb, we don't need those, so we'll have a look at how we're plugging that up. Okay, so down in here, let me get you down into here. You'll see these are the holes that were originally used for the injectors. We don't need those anymore, so we're actually going to plug them up with some Welch plugs. These are the plugs here. Now the size of these ones are 0.58 of an inch. So we're going to chuck those in, push those in. They should just fit, I think. You know me, I like to find out the hard way, but they should do the job, and then we'll move on to a few other bits and pieces. So you know the story, guys. Let's get into it. Alright guys, looks like these Welch plugs are going in nicely. These 2 first ones are done, and going on the outside of those is just a little bit of this stuff. So we're just about to tap in the last 2. Now, in case anyone's wondering, look, there's a fair bit of length sticking out of these. They were a very deep dish Welch plug. So you can get short ones, long ones. So these were fairly deep dish. Now, when you're tapping these Welch plugs in, when they're seated in place and you know they're in the right spot, when you're tapping you'll hear a much more of a solid sound. And then what we've done is just gone over with the vernier just to measure the outside length, just to make sure that they are seated properly. Alright, fuel tank is out. So I'm going to go through now and give it a really good clean. As you can see, it's absolutely filthy. I'm just going to leave the sender unit there as is, all that kind of bizzo. I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to be a straight swap. So yeah, so what I'm going to do now is give it a really good clean, and we'll take a look. And we'll take a look at my one of my friends as well, one of my new pets. All right, so here's one of my pets. Nice redback spider, or a black widow, depending on what part of the world you're from. One of these bit me a few weeks back. Not as big as this one, but I don't recommend it. But there's been heaps. There's heaps under here. You can see all the webs. This is just like a breeding ground. I mean, look at all that. There's another one up there. His buddy. There's another one over there. So yeah, so there's a fair few under here. So yeah, we'll leave them alone and move on to the next job. Alright, so I have given the fuel tank a good clean down on this side anyway. So what you'll see is some smear marks. I'm not too worried about that. Now, as you can see, there would have been a few of these pads on there. So I am going to lay down new ones. Now what I've got... what I've got here is... Okay, buddy. All right, well... Now, what I've got here is some of this stuff. It's just a self-adhesive, like a latex. So I'm going to cut patches and then lay that onto the fuel tank. And then I will take off all these old cut fuel lines and get them ready for new fuel lines. All right, it's looking good. I have finished putting down all of the the foam padding. It sticks down really nicely, and that stuff I just picked up from the hardware section. So that's gone down really, really nice. So what I'm going to do now is take off these old manky cut hose lines, and we'll get this ready to go back in. Alright guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. It's really windy at the moment. So what we've done, we've mocked up the fuel pump, fuel filter, and run a fuel line down which connects up with the original fuel line that comes up from the tank. Now, the fuel line, the original Toyota one, the hose that connects to it has an inside diameter of 6 mil. However, the one coming off the fuel pump will be 8 mil. So what we've done, we've put an adapter on this end, and that's taken care of that issue. Now what we'll do is most likely run the fuel line down to the centre between the two carbs and then set everything up. So we have done a slight test fit with the carbs. Now, one of the issues we've run into is this water inlet part. So that has caused an issue with the inlet manifold, so we had to shave a little bit off this off the inlet, and plus the other problem is the part of the carb rubs against this section here, so this is going to have to be shaved down, or maybe I can buy a spacer which pushes the carbs out even further. So we'll tinker with that over the next few weeks just to find out what is the best move forward. Now, another problem we ran into with setting up the inlet manifold is because I had such deep dish Welch plugs, the bottoms had to be shaved off to allow the inlet manifold to bolt on. So that was just another slight issue there. Obviously, if you were using a short dish Welch plug, I don't think you'd run into any issue there at all. But there are a couple of things that we've been doing over the weekend, just slowly getting through it. We've blown out the fuel lines, one coming up from the tank and the return line, so that's all been blown out and cleaned. And I've just got to put the fuel tank back in there and put new hoses in. But apart from that, that's pretty much where we're up to. Now I'll move on to a couple of other things. On the red line inlet manifold, there is one, it comes with one pre-drilled hole. So that's that one just down in there. Okay, now that's a threaded part within the inlet manifold. Now we've used that to run the vacuum for the brake booster. Okay, so the piece that we put into that, the metal piece we put in that hole, the metal piece in that hole came off the AE82 4AC setup. So it threaded straight in, no problems at all. So that was nice and handy. Now, the other issue I'm going to have is I need another vacuum line, which is for the return line from the charcoal canister. Okay, so I need to figure that one out. And the other issue I have at the moment is the exit point on the rocker cover for the engine gases. Typically that would get recirculated back into the inlet manifold, but I'm just not too sure how I'm going to go about doing that at the moment. So that there's a couple of two little issues I need to figure out, but nothing over the top major. Alright, so one problem I did create was that I used the clutch master from the AE82, which the two arms that come off, that go to the pedal, were the wrong length. So we had to take them off the donor carb, take the cylinder off the donor car and put the correct AE82 one in, and we also updated and put the correct line in there. Originally that was off the AE92, but that's all been fitted now with the AE82, and it bolts up nicely.